Revelation 5 was blood and his word. Open these seals will experience, and he is Christ. Let's read Revelation chapter 7, and behold, conquering, and to so that on this return, the army of the heaven comes a sharp threat, the wine faithful and true. Can somebody tell me who that is? Yeah, you all can preach already, so perfect. Jesus is trying to point to us. When the first seal for the awful and horrible things starts to unfold, and by Romans chapter 1 verse 16 says, and by Romans chapter 1 verse 16 says that the gospel is the power of God to save. In this sense, to save. In this sense, the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, we have observed the supernatural spread of the gospel across the nations and the world, from Jerusalem moving towards the entire Greek world, moving towards the West, and at the same time towards India, towards Africa, and now Asia is the center of Christianity. We have the largest populations of Christians in the world. And the gospel has made its way across the globe and will continue to make more and more citizens for the kingdom of God. How many of you has joined in a marathon before? Like ran a full 42 kilometers. Okay, half of them, anyone join a half marathon? I raised up my hand because I did like a few times. Wow, past the call. Woo. So tough. People actually died from the first person that ran marathon actually died. So I don't know why you all like pay money to join all this kind of thing, but yeah. So the story is there's this Philippides. His name is this Greek guy. This Athenians. There was a battle of Marathon, right? And so from afar he saw that the ship was turned towards Athens, and he was like, "Oh, we must have won the war." Actually, they didn't won the war, but he was like, "Hey, we won the war." Then he ran like 40 miles back to Athens, and then he just proclaimed to the city, "We have won!" And then he just dropped dead and died. But the king is still out there in the battle. The armies is still out there in the battle. But he said, "We have won." I think that's the state that we are in, right? We've heard that we have won. The battle is already won. But we're waiting for the king to return to consummate this victory and put everything together in the end. Meanwhile, when the king is still returning, things are still happening. Wars are still breaking out elsewhere. Lives are still broken, and everything is still in motion until the king comes back again. The cross marks the start of an era of certain victory that we have already won. It's also an era that's marked with continuous chaos, brokenness, and destruction. Why? So that we can know how destructive sin is. And then we see that in the glory of Christ, victory is certain. He is conquered. My brothers and sisters, in the next seals that opens, terrible, horrible things will happen. Let us take comfort that Christ is still in control, and those who believe in him shall share in his victories. Let's read Revelation 6, verse 3 to 8 together. 1, 2, go. When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come." And out came another horse, bright red, and his rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so that people should slay one another. and he was given a great sword. When he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come." And I looked, and behold, a black horse, and his rider a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard what seems to be a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and wine." When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the four living creatures say, "Come." And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his rider's name was Death, and Hades followed him. And they were given authority over a fourth of the earth to kill with sword, and with famine, and with pestilence, and by wild beasts of the earth. As the second seal is opened, the rider of the bright red horse is introduced. Right? This rider of the bright red horse brings war, slaughters, and killings. Since the time of Jesus' resurrection, there are no less than 1,500 major nation scale war around the globe, with tens of thousands of small scale tribal, local, and civil war. And technology, we have advanced so much in technology, but technology also has escalated the damage and the stake of war. The devastation that we saw in World War I and especially World War II is still vivid and fresh in our mind even after generations after the war. In our lifetime here, we saw in the past 5 years, the Russo-Ukrainian war, Israel-Hamas war, the Israel-Iran war, China and India, India and Pakistan, just recently civil unrest in Nepal and Indonesia. And it just seems like we never really have a time of peace. I just found out that the United States is currently waging about 80 over wars, technically still at war. Right? I don't know about Malaysia though. But war seems to mark this era. I'm never short of these things that are happening. And on the third seal, they introduced the riders of a black horse. This black horse, he brings a scale, and essentially he brings economic downturns, scarcities, famines, and economic injustice. Right? He says that 1 quarts of flour for sorry, say that again. I lost her. Okay, yeah, a quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine. A denarius is 1 day's worth of wage. Just to buy a bag of flour or wheat is going to cost you your entire day of salary. Yep. Today we have my kase right now. Some of us enjoying that. But imagine like your entire salary is being spent on just basic food alone. And these economic downturns seems to become more and more intensive right now. Just last Monday, I was walking through Pasar Malam or night market with my mom. And I walked past this store that sells vegetables, and also another store that sells fruit. And every time I walk past these, it's always the same line. Wah, sekarang semua pun naik ah. Everything raises prices right now. All the price has gone up, right? Just an excuse for them to charge you more, but you hear this all the time, right? Especially in this economic right now. Wars and economic exploitation, unsustainable industrial practices have created severe famine and food crisis around the world as well. So this is what we see. And on the fourth seal, it introduces the rider of the pale horse. This rider very specifically has a name His name is Death, right? You hear the name, you already felt very scary. He brings death through diseases, calamity, natural disasters, war, and famine. Brothers and sisters, we live in an era of medical technology, medical wonders right now. The fact that we can live up to 80, 100, we almost defeated right now. But we're still constantly dealing with new diseases. And actually, we have not still defeated death yet. In China, we had one of the strongest typhoon this year, and wow, my friends from Hong Kong, it just lasted 1 day, so I don't like it happens all the time. Like all these natural disasters are getting stronger and stronger, and global warming is causing seasons to change. Pastor Matthew is telling me that the seasons in Japan has already changed and already delayed and things like that, and so it has great impact across the globe. Now, all these three seals, all this sounds very deathy, very scary, very in despair. Because we are created for order. We're not created for chaos. So when all these occurrences of war, famine, and disaster shakes up our desire for security, destruction. But even so, there is hope, my brothers and sisters. While these riders of scary horses have been given power to ravage the world, their time are but limited because of the supremacy of the rider of the white horse. He is the ultimate victor, the powerful authority which is called the Prince of Peace. In him, he will bring all chaos to peace. The true shalom. Therefore, do not worry. These are but landmarks and milestones. There are some brewing storms that tell us that the calm and peace that Jesus brings is forever. So hope in Jesus. Hope in Jesus. Next, let's look at Revelation 6, verse 9 to 11. Let's read it together. 1, 2, go. When he opened the fifth seal, I saw the altar. O sovereign Lord, holy and true, how long before you will judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? And they were given rope and told to rest a bit longer, until the numbers of their fellow servants and their brothers should be complete, who were to be killed as they themselves had been. The time after Jesus' death and resurrection is an era that is marked with persecution of the saints and even death. Yet they continue to hope in the Lamb, knowing that Jesus is the sovereign Lord, holy and true. Rest in his brothers. Christ, until this day, persecution against Christians has been ongoing and intensifying. It is not new. Jesus has told John 15, 18 to 20, say, if the world hates you, and know that it has hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love you as its own. But because you are not of the world, I chose you out of the world. Therefore, the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you. A servant is not greater than his masters. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they kept my word, they will also fight here. Have to help me. Next, this year alone, 7,000 Nigeria. In one attack, 270 Christians were killed by armed Muslim Fulani Mission militia, Taling Jaya, for his evangelism work for the larger community. Brothers and sisters from the majority people group are sent to re-education camps where they face psychological pressure, torture, and intimidation. Accused on crime. Back when we were leasing, we had brothers and sisters who In Laos, a pastor was gunned down in front of his family for preaching the gospel to their own people. In US, even in US, Christian preachers are often met with ridicule, physical violence, and even death threats for faithfully preaching the gospels on the street. The quantity of persecution, my brothers and sisters. Very often we pray that God will protect his church, but Jesus repeatedly warns us that all to prepare to suffer. Revelation 6 reminds us that even death and eternity with him. Okay. Injustice, persecution, death, and loss certainly will grieve us, and it certainly should. But Jesus reminds us